Today, I'd like to thank my colleagues who are standing here with me in support of this unfunded mandate legislation. I'd like to personally thank Representative Scott Boyd as someone who had his foot in the door with this type of legislation in prior sessions. And if you know Scott, he's the type of person that is a common sense legislator, a person who tries to add a little bit of business approach to government, which I personally agree with and I think we need more of. Very simply, I'm sponsoring House Bill 1377 this session, which would amend the Pennsylvania Constitution to prohibit state mandates on political subdivisions in the absence of funding. The constitutional amendment would bar the General Assembly from enacting a bill that will result in costs to political subdivisions that will not be fully funded by the state. The appropriation must match the cost of paying for the mandate in full. Very simply, if you want something, you've got to figure out a funding source to pay for it. I think we all live within our means at home, so we're trying to tell our people from a fiscal, financial responsibility that we've got to be cognizant of other local governments because they're suffering some of the same issues that we are at the state level. And I think if you understand the history of Mike Peifer, you can understand where I'm coming from with this legislation. 7 years, before being in the House, for 7 years, I was the Pike County Treasurer. Pike County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state with many problems at our local levels, especially with probably school funding and the cost of property taxes. As you know, when you have 400 new kids in September, that's a burden. You divide that 400 number by 40, that gives you 10 new buses. That's an expense. You divide that number by 20 and you get 20 new teachers. That's an expense. So these are things that are surfacing in Pike County every day, and they're also a very large burden. Pike County, when I talk about that a little bit, has been suffering not only from that growth, but in the summer months, quite frankly, when the camping season is there and when there are many visitors to the region, the Pocono region, our population triples. So it's not only the numbers that are actually taken through the census, but in the summer months it could be triple that. And I'm very close with our local officials because of my time as a row officer, commissioners. I spend much of my time when I am home. I know Thursdays and Fridays some people don't think we work, but on Thursdays and Fridays I spend a lot of time with my local officials, mainly supervisors. And again, they have burdens on them and our borough officials. I mean, it's just not affecting the state. This recession affects many of our local governments, and I don't want to put another burden on them. One of the reasons I stand here today is because my county commissioners have sent an invoice to the governor. An invoice, which you can see right here, which I've blown up, basically talking about the district attorney's salary, which we made them a full-time office. And with that increase, they had an increased salary. Unfortunately, the funding for the increased salary was not followed. So this invoice is for the year 2008 for $101,000. It's for the year 2009, it's $104,000. So it's $206,000 invoiced to the state of Pennsylvania. So the County of Pike commissioners have mailed this invoice saying, look, you've changed the law, you've increased the salaries, but you haven't kept your end of the bargain. We have not appropriated the funds to the county for these 2 years. Now, for my district, the 139th district, which includes 3 counties, Pike, Wayne, and Monroe, you could take that $206,000, multiply it by 3. There's $618,000 that's not coming back to my district for a bill that we passed. The appropriation was never set aside, and this is a perfect example of an unfunded mandate where we have passed a law, and for some reason in the bill, the funding never followed. One of the reasons I'm here also from a state level, I mean, you can take 67 counties and do the math. I mean, you're looking at $7 million a year. So 7 and multiply it, and it's 14 million, it's going to be 21 million. I mean, at what point do we say, now we have an issue? What was 7 million, something that we could work with, that we passed, and we all passed it. Now we're going to have to revisit this, and it's going to be, instead of a $7 million, it's going to be a $20 million shortfall. Now it's an issue at a time when we don't even have a surplus. Now at a time when we're actually completely, have a deficit in the state government. So when we pass the bill, we've got to also pass the funding. We've had surpluses in the years when this was passed. We should have funded it then, not creating the issue it is today. I also have worries in the future. Look, I have small children, and I look at the recycling program. Last week was Earth Day here. Throughout the nation, people were planting trees and doing wonderful, garbage cleanups and different activities, teaching our children it's important to recycle. Well, a recycling program in Pike County is extremely expensive. I mean, it's labor intensive, it's capital intensive because you need the trucks, the bins. The mileage that we travel to go to the recycling centers is astronomical. And look, I believe in recycling, but we've got to fund the program. I mean, we can't just say that's a great program without following with the proper funding. Last summer with $4 a gallon diesel, our program was just bottoming out. So look, as much as I am here today to fight for what has occurred, you know, I worry in the future that we've got to change the way our thought process works, or we're going to find ourselves, you know, in trouble with our local officials, and quite frankly, just passing the burden on to them. So I'd like to introduce Representative Boyd for a few of his comments, and then I'd like to.
Thanks, Representative Peifer. It's a pleasure to join you in sponsoring House Bill 1377. When we first discussed this concept, it was at the heart of it. I really appreciate your vision and talking about the future, because ultimately we here in Harrisburg seem to have a penchant for wanting to do good things, and we talk about that and we pass laws, but then we all want to talk about how we don't want to raise taxes. And at the same time that we come up with all these grand ideas and these grand plans about things that we're going to do for the state of Pennsylvania, that sounded like a great idea. It passed with large bipartisan support in both chambers, and it was supposed to be funded by the state, and lo and behold, we just decided we're not going to send that money back to our counties. And the bill that you've proposed is a constitutional amendment. Constitutions are limitations upon state government. They are a statement from the people that you will not continue to do something. And I love the way this is constructed, because what it says is, in the Constitution of Pennsylvania, the people tell the government to have you pass legislation at the state level that costs we, the taxpayers, money at the local level without you sending the cash. And I appreciate your leadership. I really enjoy that you managed to get. I'd like to see that check when he writes that check to them. As this gets past due, I assume there will be interest and penalties that will be assessed, because if you don't pay your taxes on time, we get hit with interest and penalties. So I'm assuming that the governor's going to come through and write a check to Pike County, and while he's doing it, maybe the rest of the counties that instituted full-time district attorneys without that bill being funded. Of the House of Representatives to have this bill moved from for a vote. I would submit that it will pass.
Surprisingly, Representative Scavella would like to make a comment.
I'm impressed, Representative. I first want you to know that there is a bill in the House, I proposed it the last couple of years, to take care of the funding for the district attorney, but it's a darn shame. You know, the buck stops here, that we have to pass legislation here in this Commonwealth not to send a
Concludes our press conference. I'd like to thank everyone again for being here today. Hopefully this does, yeah, this, we're making it, that's different.